Well, it's that time of the year again. It's fall. And as you can tell from all the leaves, it's definitely getting colder out. Now, today marks a sad occasion. I'm going to scrap my trophy-winning Accord wagon. And the reason for that is I've come to terms that I need to know when to call it. In this car, I should have called it a year ago. This has sat in my backyard now for a year. And the reason is one, I really like how the back end started coming in on this thing. It looks awesome, and it was actually half decently strong. Two, is I've let this car sit for a year and a half. And after sitting for a year and a half, I really don't think this thing is going to be very good anymore. The motor, basically sitting out in the elements for a year and a half, is not going to be happy. I did actually fix this thing at one point in time to run it somewhere else. I did steal the rear tires off it to run on a different car. The cage is still in it. As far as I know, when I parked this car, it still ran. I still have a battery in it that is 100% dead. But I'm going to call this car as a non-fixing car now. And the reason for that is one, I've been robbing parts off this car all year. I've robbed all the front passenger sides for suspension for that 2003 Honda Accord that we did. I've robbed the front bumper. I've even robbed stuff underneath the hood that you wouldn't think that somebody would rob. Brake booster, battery cable, that kind of stuff. I actually think I even took the belt off this for a different car. But it's a sad day because if you guys don't remember or even know, I actually drove this car on the road for about 2 years. I paid $400 for this car, and it passed E-test, it passed the safety, and I drove the snot out of this car for 2 years. This is what really made me enjoy beater cars. For one, you buy them, you drive them, you beat the snot out of them for a year or two until the E-test where I live runs out with the emissions. And then when the cost of fixing it, for example, this thing needed new wheel bearings, new brakes, and it actually broke the harmonic balancer off of it. So I deemed it as too expensive to fix and keep driving on the road. So I derbied it, where the car meant so much to me that the wife and I, we put a lot of time into it. We painted like Scooby-Doo. It did really good. It won Best in Show, and it actually won the Demolition Derby as well. So I can't really argue about this car. I spent $400 on it. I won, I think, $650 with it. But today is when I'm going to call it. This car here is not worth fixing. The last time I ran it, it idled at $6,000 because of how far the motor was pushed back into the engine bay. I'm pretty sure the intake was splitting off of it. But it needs too much work to be ran again. And honestly, with the amount of cars I've now gotten, it's not worth running. I was going to keep this car for parts, but honestly, all the parts I think I need, I can honestly remove before it goes. I'm going to cut ball joints off it. I'm going to cut the struts and maybe the distributor. Just little things like that, because I actually do have another one of these. I will remove my cage, obviously, my fuel tank, and my battery, even if it's just for scrap weight now. Because I do have another one of these cars, and I'm actually stockpiling a lot of parts for it. But I haven't really wanted to get rid of it because I was waiting to run this thing this year. But now this car sat here for a full year as well, and I still haven't ran it. So I'm going to just take all the spare parts from that car, put inside this car, and then hold this car until it is ready to go. I'm not sure where this thing's going to be ran, but who knows, it's all coming up. But sometimes you just need to know when to call it. Sometimes you gotta know when to fold it and when to scrap it. Even though scrap's low right now, I've got so many other cars that I don't need this car. I don't need to waste my time taking a damaged car into a demolition derby. Sometimes taking a pre-ran car is a little bit better for the rules, but sometimes taking a car that's ran like this one, where the front end's actually twisted at the strut towers. Let me show you. Even though I've got my repair plates on it, the hood keeps coming down. The strut towers have actually bent in. The passenger side is a much better example of how they bent. It actually bent so bad it kicked the fuse panel out of the car. But with this being that bent, the front of this car is pretty much junk, and I'd pretty much have to use the back of it. And the back is still pretty solid, but it's came in almost 2 feet, 1.5 feet at least. So there's not really a whole lot of merchandise and real estate left on this car, so it's just time to call it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to save a couple pieces out of the rear suspension, and I'm going to save a lot of pieces out of the front suspension for the other car. And the best place to store these parts is actually in the other car, because when it comes time to build that other car, you have all the parts there. We're going to keep the distributor, we're going to keep all the spark plug wires, we're going to keep a couple of these bigger fuses, and basically that's it. I might even just cut the whole fuse panel out and put it right inside that other car. But she's good to go, and it's going to be a sad day to scrap this thing, but I knew the day was coming sometime, and today is that day.